It has been said that—
Give me Sean!
Excuse me, that was rude. What I was trying to say is that I think many of us are familiar with the iconic—
Born to be wild.
Alright guys, can you just give it a rest, man? Let me start the video. Alright, turn it off. Turn it off. Put something on that's just a little more dialed back, please. Much better. Well, it has been said that speech is silver, but silence is golden, and recently I've been doing some thinking about how this applies to the medium of video games, and even more specifically, the way that the player characters, the protagonists, are designed and implemented into any given title. Now, of course, this is nothing new, and I'm pretty sure you have even heard it all before. It's the eternal debate of voiced main characters versus the more quiet types. But today, with you, I do want to try to take that discussion just a little bit deeper by doing what else but yapping about it for about half an hour. And I would say this was all ignited in me pretty recently during a playthrough of Fallout New Vegas after having played some Fallout 4 just a few months prior, and man, the difference in these two approaches and how I felt about my quiet courier character versus the loose-jawed sole survivor, it just seemed more staggering and honestly shocking than ever before to me.
Give me Sean!
So I kind of started to reflect and scanned my own past few decades of video game experiences to just try to remember how many titles I had played and enjoyed that had a purely silent protagonist versus something with just a little bit more pre-packaged characterization. Because I don't want you to get me twisted with this video. I acknowledge that there are absolutely main characters out there that are voiced and voiced brilliantly well. I mean, Geralt, Nathan Drake, Solid Snake, games like these just simply wouldn't be half of what they are without the amazing performances that are behind these leads. But I will say, when you start to compare those to the games where your main character is some type of silent, it is pretty fascinating to realize how many details of that game's design are changed and just how much it affects the core philosophy of the entire experience. A choice this simple alters writing, game flow, sound design, the type of immersion the player is going to experience, the hues of emotional investment, and so many other little things. I mean, let's take a very basic example like Link, who is silent aside from his little battle cries, versus Sonic, who is very much a fleshed out character with opinions and quips during the gameplay. I mean, the tone of these two games is absolutely set by its star, what they are saying, the amount that they have to say, and how they are saying it. So if you know me and you know this channel, you'd know that I just love all video games and the ways that they can all be played and made. I'm sure you feel the same if you are here now. So no, I am not saying that silent protagonists are superior across the board. I just today, right now, want to explore the power and unique qualities that they can bring to the table in this medium. So what's up everybody, welcome to another video. I just want to give a very quick shout out to all of my loyal patrons on Patreon for supporting me away from YouTube. You guys are my personal favorite. I am Ghost, your host as always, and now without further ado, let's— sorry. Well, I gotta say, something that I think is often completely lost in this discussion is that not all silent protagonists are made equal, and in fact, I would say there is absolutely more variety here than in the voiced side of things. So let's draw some key distinctions right now and just throw all of our quiet heroes into three different categories, with the first being player avatars. Now, these are characters that absolutely have the ability to, and actually do often talk within the confines of the games they inhabit, but we as the players simply don't hear or see it in full. You may be given like the general idea being communicated by your character in a shorthand text-based choice thing, but that's usually it. Additionally, avatars are often protagonists that we have a bit of freedom in creating to be unique to our gameplay style, preferences, and just general aesthetics. Think like the Fallout games, Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and 3, KOTOR, the Elder Scrolls, tons of RPGs for sure, but also plenty of games in other genres. But what's kind of funny is that many games like this often count talking to other people as one of the core mechanics of the entire experience. It's just that the voice itself and how it sounds, the emotion that things are said with, the specific sentences and turns of phrases, those are left completely and utterly up to your imagination. Now, the second type of silent protagonists is the mute. These are heroes that actually truly don't say a word. Sometimes NPCs in these games even comment directly on how quiet we are, which is always kind of funny. Gordon Freeman, for instance, the Doomslayer. I don't think the Dark Souls player characters are probably saying a word other than nodding yes or no. And I would even say, your character in many MMOs. These are the protagonists that let their actions, your actions, do all the talking for them. If it's through some violence, solving a puzzle, or just like watering plants, mute heroes can be found all over the video game world, and I would even say they're like the most common. And then finally, we have the tight-lipped. So I mentioned Link earlier in the video as a character that has a voice. We hear him, it gives emotion and action, but dude just doesn't say much. But I think in addition to Link, a lot of classic video game characters kind of fall into this very same camp. I mean, look no further than Link's cousin, Mario. He has his sort of catchphrases and short HR-approved things that he says almost like directly to you while you're playing the game, but we never hear this dude string out a completely coherent original thought. I mean, that would be weird, wouldn't it? Mario is bing bing wahooing around, giving us that characterization through his voice and mannerisms, but that's it. And I think tight-lipped characters are often these kind of safe, lovable mascot types. They let you know what they are thinking and feeling, but it's through animations or physical storytelling. And I think as an additional very important note, anytime we are talking about silent protagonists in video games, we can't just be referring to voice acting or no voice acting, because many older or just text-heavy games sometimes have main characters that speak to those around them, while others are the ... ones. But no matter which one of these three types, which character specifically you are picking out, I see one massive universal strength here with silent protagonists, and that is simply narrative flexibility. I would say when it comes to the things I value the most in a video game, story is very high up on the list. But when you take a quick look across the history of this industry, you just kind of realize there are so many different ways to deliver a compelling narrative. I mean, some opt for these simple, to the point, clean little experiences, while others want to rival some of the greatest works of fiction in both scale and scope. But for my money, I do think of all the moving parts that make up a strong story-based video game, choosing to have a silent protagonist carry the torch grants the game developers and writers an unimaginable amount of freedom. And even on the surface, I think this makes sense, right? Because if the architects of a given game are not burdened with building a predefined and fleshed out perspective and voice from which the entire experience must work around, it allows them to really spread their wings with the experimental aspects of designing a game world as a thing to be interacted with. Things like open-ended narratives, systems of player choice, morality, multiple endings, more environmental storytelling, and just overall, it really throws the ball in the court of the player to use their imagination just a little bit more to fully contextualize things for themselves. Because think about it, in many narrative-driven games, you, the player, start out very ignorant to the stuff happening around you. But as the game shows you this, and then shows you that, you slowly but surely start to absorb the terms, the places, the people, the things, and build a little mental structure of what this game is all about. However, if your protagonist has some predetermined baked-in knowledge and opinion of that world in an active and then communicated way, in my opinion, it instantly puts you at a bit of a distance from things. Because suddenly, you the player are not only trying to figure out your surroundings, but you're also trying to catch up to your protagonist and get in the know, get the knowledge that they have at the very least. Now, of course, this isn't bad design. It's not a bad idea to do this and can work perfectly fine. I just do see a more inherent rigidity in that setup for a narrative. And I think this is absolutely the kind of zone that Amnesia often falls into, right? Because how many games of any genre have we played where your player character mysteriously and conveniently has forgotten their entire past as the game is opening up? It's a not so clever but very reliable way to kind of toe that line, whether your hero is silent or not. But let's now draw up a direct comparison to kind of highlight what I'm trying to say here, because just recently I have been really enjoying a playthrough of Xenogears, the classic PlayStation 1 JRPG with giant mechs and insane philosophical questions about existence and God being explored in every cutscene. This is a game that is often heralded as one of the greatest stories ever told in video game history, and I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. But the main character, Faye, talks, and he talks a lot. I mean, this is absolutely his story, and Faye's personality is injected into things, I would say, just about every 5 to 10 minutes. You are living in the moment-to-moment experience of his emotions and his actions, and this directly informs how the game's story is both structured and told to you. Because there are times you kind of put down your controller, sit there like a good boy or girl, and watch as Faye does things in these little cutscenes. And then you deal with the aftermath of those actions throughout the gameplay sections. So I do think it is safe to say that many cinematically told games like this, even modern ones, anyone who has played those titles have had very similar experiences. Because having a protagonist that is this vocal is like having a personal guide, a character that is taking you by the hand and leading you through this story, showing it all to you, which again, here especially, it works amazingly well. But then there is a game like Chrono Cross, one of my favorites, a very similar turn-based JRPG of the same era on the very same system, and another story that has often been held up as one of the best ever. And I guess also has all these kind of crazy philosophical questions about existence being asked. But the main character here, Serge, doesn't say a thing to anyone. But you are still traveling through space and time. You're meeting aliens and cave people and trolls. You're going through the most traumatic, insane realizations about your own existence and place between these two dimensions, and the most characterization you get here is in a few short FMV sequences where things are just kind of happening to Serge. And for me personally, I gotta say, this works much better as an interactive experience. Chrono Cross overall feels so much more slow-paced, open, and airy when it comes to how the story unfolds over time. The world feels much more like a thing to be explored personally, watched, observed, and then altered over time with the actions that are laid out for you in the story. And that point of view silence really allows all the other characters around you to pull the wagon and show things to you in this more pure, first-person, unaffected way. Because there is no opinion, no interjections, no filter, no observable turmoil in Serge. There's nothing at all but whatever you at home are feeling with the controller in your hand in regards to what is happening. Because you don't even really know what Serge knows, what he's learning for the first time alongside you, what places he has been to in the past, what he thinks of them. It's all left completely unspoken. And thus, we get to project ourselves onto him and into the narrative much more intimately. Now, of course, I'm sure if you've heard discourse on this topic in the past, projectability is like the biggest talking point, but I think it goes really hand in hand with this idea of narrative flexibility as well. In Xenogears, you can kind of do whatever you want as Faye between these big story beats, but you're always pulled back to center when he's yapping here and there. Constant reminders of who he is, what he wants, and what is probably about to happen next. But I mean, it's funny. These are both excellent games that are very, very similar. I mean, if you like one, you'll love the other, but it just really highlights the difference here in both game design and that narrative delivery, and this isn't even with any voice acting being taken into account. But if we're talking about this effective projectability in this way, honestly, one of my favorite things in the world to point to is Pokemon. Because the trainer you control in every single mainline title is just this absolute statue of a person, right? He never utters a single word, even to his own mother, hardly indicating yes or no, and just kind of generally marches through the world with this determined silence. And yet still, he maintains these healthy friendships with others. He fosters deep, meaningful relationships with his Pokemon. And by all accounts, he slowly but surely earns the respect of the entire world and all these gym leaders, the Elite Four, as he climbs the ladder to become the next Pokemon champion of whatever region he is in. So if you look at this on paper, I mean, it's hilarious. This cold, psychopathic child just running train on whoever is in front of him, even remorselessly capturing godlike Pokemon and stuff. But the simple truth of this choice is that they want to allow for the player to be whoever they want to be. But I think with Pokemon, it's especially impressive and subtle in the way it works. I mean, you aren't making any active decisions in this way, and I doubt there are many people out there that play these games consciously thinking about who the trainer is. I mean, what is he thinking? What is he going to say here after I beat Brock, you know? But subconsciously, I bet 99% of people who have played these games, or especially played them as kids growing up, simply imagined the trainer was them, going about their adventure and treating people and Pokemon as they would personally. And there is such a purity in just having the entire context of an adventure this epic left blank. Then you add in the way Pokemon has you nicknaming your team and building a really unique squad that feels like it's yours. This is one of the finest executed silent protagonists, I think, in the history of video games, and that success, at least, continues to this day. Also, we must never forget in the Generation 2 games when you get to meet the protagonist from the originals Red at the very end, and every kid in the world approached this epic encounter with bated breath, wondering what he was gonna say, and then all he gave you was the iconic. Just incredible. Meta moment that lives rent-free in my head even now. Game Freak, you need to get freaky with it again. I mean, you need to cook on this level. It was perfection. But now we gotta hit pause so I can bring up one of my favorite silent protagonists ever, Kirby. Now, you know what Kirby and I have in common big time? We both love to eat and eat well. So it is my pleasure to bring you the sponsor of today's video, Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutritional goals easier than ever before by delivering fresh, never ever frozen, dietitian approved full-on meals right to your doorstep, and all you gotta do is open her up, heat, and enjoy. Now, if there's ever a time in my life I feel like Sisyphus pushing my boulder up the hill, it's when I find myself at the grocery store yet again, paying way too much for frozen food and less than fresh products. But buddy, with Factor, you can chill at home knowing that they are sweating all the tough stuff for you. Their menus are updated every single week and include over 27 meals and 33 or more add-on options. That includes keto, calorie smart, chef's choice, vegan, and veggie options. And personally, I have saved a ton of money since starting Factor just because I'm not ordering in all the time. Listen, it's a tough world out there right now, so just make it easier for yourself and let Factor take care of all your delicious, nutritious needs. Head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use code Ghostcharm50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and then 20% off your next month of orders. Once again, that is Ghostcharm50 at Factor75.com to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. So thank you so much to Factor for supporting this channel, and let's get right back to our feature presentation.
Previously on Fallout 4.
Give me my son! Give me Sean! Now!
Your boy's not here.
I agree.
You know what? I don't think we can avoid it anymore, man. Let's now talk about voice acting. I mean, stepping away from these slightly older games, having a main character with an actual human voice coming out of your speakers, it's just another ball game entirely. Even though there are some examples of great execution on this front, it is just simply not the case the majority of the time, at least in my opinion.
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't have anyone to go back to. They're all gone.
And I don't think anyone would disagree with me when I say, there is just no telling what level of quality even the biggest game companies are going to deliver with the talent they cast and how that talent is then directed throughout the recording process, especially when you're playing games that have been translated from their original language and dubbed into your native language. I think we all know of a couple Japanese games over the years that have had infamously terrible performances for the protagonist or the entire cast in English, while the original Japanese voices are like awesome.
You look just like someone I know.
Oh, really? Are you Japanese?
Yes, I live in a place called Yokosuka.
Yokosuka? That's where my little brother works.
But it is far more inexcusable when companies release a game in their native language with a humongous budget and the voice work is just hot dog water. Now, I hate to pick on games, I'm a positive guy, but Mass Effect Andromeda is a recent example that is just, I mean, it's not terrible, not the worst, but holy smokes, it ain't good. Pathfinder Ryder is your hero, and combined with the absolutely uncanny facial animations present here and some questionable dialogue writing, this just does not do it.
I mean, it's not the only thing, but okay, I should just go over there to the piloting thing.
What?
However, I watched a playthrough of someone using the Silent Rider mod, and it was night and day. I was honestly shocked. Now, of course, the original Mass Effect games featured a voiced protagonist as well, but Shepard was performed great by Mark Meer, pretty tastefully if you ask me. But with Andromeda, it's honestly an impressive feat when a game is meant to feature a ton of player choice and organic storylines, but even when I do the things I want to do, I find myself completely annoyed and disgusted by my protagonist purely because of the way the character is being portrayed. But this is a very common factor with voiced protagonists and how it changes the narrative. I mean, you might get that little hint of what your guy's gonna say in response to something, but then what comes out of his mouth is like,
It's not every day I get mugged and then witness a murder right in front of me.
whoa dude, that's not what I meant at all. But hey, sorry man, the developers, the voice actor, and the director, like years ago, yeah, they already decided for you exactly how the protagonist feels right now. It just kind of takes your hands off the controls and says, nah, we got this, and it can be very, very jarring. But another one I gotta be honest I have a really hard time with is Cyberpunk 2077. Again, I hate to do this, but the guy who voices the male V, no ill will toward the brother whatsoever, I cannot do this. I can't hear this.
The NCPD's gonna put Watson on lockdown. If I'm gonna sleep in my own bed tonight, we better put it in fifth. That flash of intense shock. I can still feel it, I remember. You could have warned me how much it hurts to die. Those are the rules, Jack. You want to be top? Gotta have some skin in the game.
I think the lingo and the writing in this game is already kind of a lot to get used to, which is fine. But hearing pretty much to me what sounds like Muscle Man from Regular Show deliver my character's lines, I'm out.
Sometimes I act all crazy when I'm bummed out, so just let me know if I'm freaking out too hard and I'll stop.
And I know this is a little bit of a hot take because I see many people on the internet praising this voice protagonist as one of the good ones, but that just further highlights my whole point, the variability of a voice, man. No matter how good the writing is, no matter who you cast and how well you think they do, it's just not going to click for everyone across the board, no matter what. I mean, there are people out there who hate Geralt's voice in English, which, I don't understand, but everyone is entitled to their opinion, right? But I don't know what it is. Me and V, we just have this toxic relationship. I cannot take this guy seriously, and that's especially in contrast to the really smooth voice acting of Jackie and then the other principal characters. And I never felt like I, the player, actually was V, nor did I have any interest in being V. So I ended up going through the process of changing the audio language to Spanish, which actually fixed like all my issues and felt appropriate in game. I guess you do what you gotta do. But I know what you might be thinking right about now, Ghost. This can happen with any character in any video game, not just the protagonist. What's the big deal? Well, you are right. I mean, there are plenty of amazing games out there that have just some absolutely horrific performances for NPCs or even other big characters.
Only thing we can control there is ourselves. Forget the ref, the fan, even the opponent. Handle your business, and the rest will take care of itself, alright?
But it is simply a different matter entirely when it's coming from a character that is supposed to be you. I mean, bad voice acting in a game like Oblivion, it's funny. You get to walk around, hear something goofy, point and laugh, and then move on in silence. But if my hero of Kvatch was saying things like,
"Now you're going to get it,"
yeah, that's gonna really take me out of it a bit. I mean, we just mentioned about how having any predetermined character at all can kind of distance the player from the game just a little bit, but I think if the voice of that character also happens to be goofy or low in quality or just not what you're expecting at all, it can widen that gap to the point where it starts to become detrimental to the experience. But I will concede this point. With an even average performance, characters that are pre-established in a certain way being voiced is just fine, great even. Henry from Kingdom Come Deliverance, Sam from Splinter Cell, Leon from Resident Evil. These are heroes that we already know when we're booting up the game have existed in their worlds with some solid footing as an individual for a while. Honestly, it's part of the draw oftentimes, and there is almost an understanding that we are simply getting to embody that character for the duration of this game. So I think there's even an expectation for there to be a unique voice that is theirs. We expect that kind of healthy distance between us and them so that we can get to know them. But when a character is meant to be a completely original one, built from scratch with your own imagination as an extension of you, I do think it's pretty much always a bad idea to give that protagonist a voice. It's just way too much of a wild card, and guess what? It's a wild card that can be completely avoided. So, whoops, man, sorry, I didn't mean to bash anyone's favorite game there or your favorite voice actor, but hey, I do think if Mass Effect Andromeda is your favorite game, I'm just more generally sorry for that. I think the final, element or elephant in the room is immersion. Oh yeah. Now, I know a lot of this video has kind of been about RPGs, but I think immersive games are present in any and all genres. And the formula necessary for creating experiences that you can really lose yourself in for an entire day, man, it's a delicate thing. It's a perfectly balanced cocktail of sharp artistic execution, accurate ambient sound design, engaging and satisfying gameplay loops, good pacing, and rich atmospheres. But of course, wrapped up in that is the multitude of choices that developers make in regards to the protagonist. I mean, who are they? What do they look like? How do they move? Do we even see them at all? And this, I think, is where the phrase "silence is golden" is the most applicable, because I don't know about you, but when I'm really immersed, it is always in those quiet moments. The sun cresting over an ash-covered hill in Morrowind, taking a relaxing, shallow swim in Subnautica, the tension of impending violence during a stealthy section of Dishonored. It's stuff like that, man. And if you ask me, the best thing your protagonist can do in moments or whole games like this is just please stay out of the way. I don't want to hear from you right now. I don't want to think about you. Let me have this moment in this environment. Geralt, I love you, but I know that the wind's howling. For God's sake, man, be quiet. But of course, immersion isn't just about quiet, and I think a really underrated example in this regard is actually FPS games, classic ones like Quake, Doom, Unreal, and then their more modern indie descendants like Hrot or Dusk. These games offer a brand of immersion of a different sort, but it is immersion nonetheless. I'm talking white knuckle, speedy, brutal, and engaging that just goes at your pace in really interesting environments that are oozing with charm. But guess what? Most of these games like this have totally silent protagonists, and I believe that is the biggest part of what helps that unique brand of immersion stay afloat. I mean, you're on a roller coaster ride, man. You're not caring about who the Doomslayer is or what he's thinking about, what his favorite food might be. He has graciously gifted you his massive body as a tool for the destructive gameplay, son. He doesn't want and doesn't need to say anything to you. It just allows for this visceral, direct link between your monkey brain, what you're doing with your hands, and what is happening on the screen. It just works. But then even in some more story-heavy, slower-paced FPS games like Half-Life 1 and 2 or Portal 1 and 2 that have these more fleshed-out protagonists with lore surrounding them, still opt for the very same sort of silence. And here it could be a silence that magnifies the world around you, making whatever you are meant to feel more intense. Could be a sense of solitude, of hopelessness, of fear, or whatever these games are trying to convey. Now that's all to say, Duke Nukem, my friend, I'm sorry, but you can't get in the club.
Yo-ho-ho and a bottle of Jack.
But I also think that the point of view the player is visually given is a very important aspect of this sort of immersion as well. I mean, I think a third-person game lends itself far more to wanting to hear from your protagonist directly, while first-person feels like it's supposed to just be you and the world straight to the vein. Now this one might sound like it's really out of left field, but look at a game like Animal Crossing. Don't laugh, I heard you laugh. Animal Crossing. This is unique because no characters here really have real voice acting. I mean, it's more of like that cutesy animal mushmouth bumbling. But even though your ever-smiling, chipper little villager character ends up like literally running entire towns, owning islands, and becoming the mayor, we never speak ourselves. But really in any simulation game like Animal Crossing or even Stardew Valley, I mean, this is another genre of immersion altogether, immersing the player in interpersonal relationships that grow and change over time, adapting to systems of gift-giving, likes and dislikes, in some cases even building into full-on romance and children. These are some of the most approachable game mechanics worldwide, and they are firmly dependent on your protagonist, in my opinion, remaining silent. I mean, can you imagine if you're playing in this modern Fire Emblem game and you're on a date and you hear your avatar be like,
"Yo, what's good, shawty? Yo, man still around?"
I mean, like everything else in this video, it comes back to that idea of projectability. But immersion is just a major key here, and I would estimate it's probably the principal reason many games to this day still opt for a safe, silent protagonist. So look, I mean, even though I am just barely scratching the surface, I think you can see clearly there are many different strengths here. But I also totally understand how subjective something like this is, because every single person who is watching this video right now and loves playing video games enjoys different aspects of them. I have friends personally that almost exclusively play these super cinematic, story-driven modern games like God of War and The Last of Us, and then there is my older brother who plays Dwarf Fortress and Kenshi for thousands of hours, creating his own narratives and emergent storylines based on what is happening organically in his game. But I do think it is objectively interesting to just think about how much this medium has evolved over the last 15 or so years and how much it's changing right now. I mean, we keep seeing more and more of these games that really to me just feel like interactive movies with some incredible writing and acting at times. I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2, I got no problem with Arthur Morgan being voiced, are you kidding me? It's like Oscar worthy. But I do think that the core principle of video games still exists and you can't ignore it. This is meant to be an interactive art form, a type of escapism that puts you firmly in the driver's seat and lets you play hero instead of simply watching one. So I do concretely think that the greatest way to maximize that sense of fantasy is always going to be giving us a protagonist that is a blank slate. A silent, moldable, scalable canvas for us to either project ourselves onto or more intimately experience the vast ocean of interesting virtual worlds that are out there to explore. Because no matter what your opinion is in this discussion, I think we can all agree that there are absolutely times where silence, it really is golden. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening to this little video all the way to the end. I think sometimes there are these things in my head I just gotta get out in video form. This is absolutely an example of that, a little ranty, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Of course, I really want to know your guys' thoughts on this topic down below. Please comment. I think I am going to be getting right back to some of the Characterpedia videos, but I also want to make a concerted effort to just upload more carefree content like this too, so please let me know what you guys want to see, and be sure to click that Ghostcharm 50 link down below to support the channel and give Factor a shot. That is all from me for today, everyone. Go play some games, be kind to those around you, and I will see you all very soon. Until next time, peace.